Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Ghost
Hello.
Education 101. I am Dr. Heather Leigh, and as always, I am joined by my fabulous co-host, Dr. Tiffany Frazier. It still feels weird to talk, so I may bow out halfway through because
That's
my mouth
okay.
after talking a lot, but we have a lot of questions for our amazing guest. But one quick announcement. I know Tiffany and I texted about this briefly the other day, but I'm running with it. Make sure you guys tune in on Black Friday. We are going to have an amazing announcement and something special for some of our followers. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. So I don't know about you, Tiffany, but I'm looking forward to today's guest.
I have been looking forward to today's guest since you told me we were going to have today's guest on the show. I'm super excited. I have so many questions, and I think our viewers are going to love hearing about this artifact and
Exactly.
the lore and the myths and what's true, what's not. And I hear there might be some new information too.
I know that's what rumor has it. So since we're only
Yeah.
a 2-hour show, I'm going to bring
Yeah.
him on right now since I know we're going to probably run out of time. But welcome, David. Glad to have you here tonight.
Hello.
Hi.
So real
Welcome.
quick to get started. I know a lot of people know who you are. If not, a lot of people definitely know who you're connected to. So for those who are unfamiliar with you, can you just share a little bit about your background and what first drew you to Key West history and who it is you work side by side with?
Yeah, so I moved to Key West in 1996, and I kind of feel like I was led there. And I went to start a ghost tour, and it was during a time when there were really not any ghost tours in the United States. There might have been like 5. We're talking
Wow.
pre-internet times. And when I
Yeah.
went there and started researching stuff, nobody was talking about ghosts in Key West, but I uncovered this treasure trove in the library there, locked away in this vault. And it led me to the artist house in Key West, which was the Otto home. And when I went there and knocked on the door, I said, "Oh, I'd read about the ghost of Anne Otto." And I told the guy, "I'm here to talk to you about your ghost." And he goes, "Oh, you want to hear about Robert the doll?" I said, "No, I want to hear about Anne Otto." He said, "No, you want to hear about Robert the doll." And that moment set me on an adventure that's been going on for 30 years. Now,
Wow.
Robert the doll, he's known as the world's most haunted doll. Um,
Mhm.
I so when I went to the house, I had things happen. When I went to the museum, he was not on display. They didn't like ghosts. He used to be locked in a back room.
Oh, wow. Okay.
When
Oh.
I first saw the doll, creepy, strange, but then
Huge.
I had something happen. And when I saw that doll come alive, I said, I got to find out what's going on. And so that's really what started my journey with Robert the doll. And, the museum owns him as an artifact, but nobody can really own the spirits in Robert the doll. And because of my research with the doll, and I kind of reverse engineered all the legends about him. And then I was able to uncover this treasure trove of history and found out what the true origins were. And I kind of put them together to find out the real story of Robert.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I've been Robert's historian for 30 years, but more importantly, I mean, the relationship has evolved. And today I call myself a doll tender because I care for the spirits inside of the doll. And it's not just one spirit, there's multiples.
Right.
And I kind of try to figure them out and nurture them. So
Wow.
the doll tender is the best title that I can come up with because I don't own Robert.
Mhm.
Right.
I mean, there's the artifact, and then there's the spirits in there,
Mhm.
and so, but I work close. Here's the cool thing about Robert. He's owned by the Fort East Martello Museum, which is part of the Key
Mhm.
West Art and Historical Society,
Okay.
and they're a nonprofit organization. Okay, so they have the lighthouse in Key West. They have the old custom house. They're this great organization. So they're much larger than Robert, and
Mhm.
they realize that he's an important artifact, and they realize that he's an important revenue stream now.
Right.
But they look at him as an artifact.
Mhm.
They look at caring for him and preserving him. And that's why we partnered, to where I'll do ghost tours there at night. And because of my relationship with it all. So I kind of handle the paranormal
Mhm.
aspects of Robert, while they do the care for the doll,
I
the
see.
artifact.
Awesome. Do you mind sharing what happened when you first saw Robert that really sparked your interest? You mentioned that something happened.
Yeah. So I go to the auto home, and
Mhm.
Daryl Meyer was the owner of the house at the time. And at this time in Key West, people had owned their bed and breakfast for like 20 years, 30 years. We had long time people. Nowadays they turn over regularly, a corporate buyout here and there. But
Right.
Daryl had been there for a long time. And when he started telling me about the haunted doll, I thought the guy was insane.
Hmm.
But when he said, "Do you want to see the attic where the doll used to live?" The phone at their front desk flew off the hook. And the cord's attached back there.
Yeah.
Flies off, stretches back. I look at that, and I mean, I was 26 years old, and my knowledge of the paranormal wasn't great. My fascination with it was huge, but there weren't all the TV shows and things like that back then.
Right. Yeah.
And so I look at that and I'm like, what the hell? And so I'm like, what? And Daryl didn't even flinch. And he says, "Yeah, I think Robert wants to see you."
Wow.
And that's the brain isn't able to process that stuff immediately.
Yeah.
It's happening. And I'm a very agreeable person. So I'm just like, okay. He goes past this bookcase and goes to go up this staircase. And it's this beautiful old Victorian style mansion, small for a mansion, but and the main attribute is this turret room. But so I go to follow him up the staircase. The bookcase opens. There's a door in the bookcase, and it opens up and blocks me.
Oh no.
And I look at him. I'm like, what's going on? And he says, "Just close it and come on up. It's okay."
Wow.
And we go up the stairs, and then at the back of the house, there's a very narrow staircase that leads up to the attic.
Mhm.
And when you go up into the attic, there's a hatch door that you open up, and you get up in there. Now, people say that Gene built a special room for Robert the doll. He didn't construct a special room. The attic is separate. The way the house is set up, it's separated into two parts. So there's a large attic and a small attic, and the
Okay.
stairs led up into the small attic. And he had converted that into Robert's room.
Mm.
So we go up and we get in there, and it was still furnished
Like it was when he lived there.
with
Wow.
Robert's furniture.
Wow.
And I wish I knew at that moment how special that was, because, through the years with different owners, that stuff went away.
Yeah.
But I walked in there, and what I recall is a small double bench and a little rocking chair, and almost like a locker, like a foot locker
Mhm.
in the center with teacups and stuff on it. And Robert wasn't there, but I look at this room and I'm like, this is very strange. And the attic was hot, but it's Key West, so you have that
Yeah.
attic heat that you'd expect.
Mhm.
And then he started telling me the story of Robert the doll, and suddenly the energy changed. And you could tell somebody was listening to us. And then the heat energy changed, and it was, you felt something just run up your back.
Mm.
And I remember thinking I was going to throw up.
Oh, yeah.
And I had never experienced anything quite like this. So I told him, I said, "Oh, thanks for showing me. This is really nice. Let's go back downstairs. I got to go." We start walking down, and I asked him, I said, "Where's this doll now?" And he told me he's at the East Martello, but he's not on display.
Hmm.
You have to call if you want to see him.
Wow.
So I called 40 Smartello and I said, I hear Robert, the doll's there. Is it possible to see him? And the person who answered the phone said, no, I can't help you with that. Call back tomorrow when so-and-so is working. And I called 3 or 4 times. Nobody wanted to show me Robert. And some of them, I got the sense they were afraid.
Hmm.
Some of them, I got the sense that they just didn't like Robert. But then Stacy Rousseau was the curator there. And I went up and she brought Robert out and he was in a back office. And I remember she was clutching him, you know, she was holding him like a baby in the chair and she's talking to him. And she said, "Hey, Robert, this is David. He's starting something called a ghost tour and he wants to take some photos of you." And I thought,
You're like, what is this?
I thought people in Key West are freaking crazy. I mean, I'm serious. This is the second person who's talking about this doll like it's a living thing. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'd seen the Twilight Zone episodes and things like that, but haunted dolls weren't a thing.
Mhm.
And she set him down on this beautiful big table, and it's an old brick fort, an old Civil War fort. And she sets him down in his chair on the table, and she leaves, and I'm alone. Nobody used to go to 40 Smartello. I mean, it's a Key West museum, but they were getting, a couple people a day. There wasn't any big attraction there. And I take some photos, and it's a creepy doll. His face has been eaten away by termites.
Yeah.
He's the size of a small human. He's the size of
Mhm.
a child. There's definitely that effect going on where you're like, oh, this is, the uncanny valley. But what ended up happening, I said, oh, I want to get a picture of him without his hat on.
Oh.
And he's dressed as a sailor. If anybody hasn't
Mhm.
seen him, he's dressed as a sailor. He's a little under 4 feet tall. I reach in, I grab the brim of his hat, and as I picked it up off of his head, the doll came alive. And I don't mean he got up and started dancing or anything like that, but he went from an inanimate object to, there was something in him that his eyes changed. The mood in the room changed. I felt that same heat energy and that same feeling up my back
Wow.
that I had felt at the artist house. And when I looked at this, I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. I've got to get a photo. And I had one of the old film cameras. I tried to take the picture. It didn't work.
Oh.
I pushed the button 2 more times. It's not working. I turn it around to look at it and see if I'm doing something wrong. It shot, boom, boom, boom. It took 3 pictures of my face. And then I went back to try to take a picture of Robert. It didn't work again. And then I heard a giggle.
Oh, wow.
And then the life just disappeared. It went away from his eyes. And I was alone in the room again.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And when that happened, I mean, that is the moment that I'm like, whoa, I've got to figure out what's going on here.
Yeah.
Because there were some things written about Robert before this, and this is what makes Robert very unique. Any haunted doll you look at today, it's going to have an unproven history.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them come from thrift stores. Most of them come from a story that can't be verified. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that to take away from their hauntedness, because I do believe that spirits can enter these dolls at any time with energy placed on them. But even Annabelle, you cannot find the provenance on any doll like you can with Robert.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able, but nobody knew at the time that I encountered him. They said maybe he was made by an angry nanny.
Mm.
There were these legends, and they didn't call them like an evil doll or a haunted doll. They called them the enchanted doll.
Oh, interesting.
And there was one book, I think by Arthur Meyer, and uh, and it was a compilation of different ghost stories. And he had done some incredible interviews. He captured this great stuff in the early 1990s when the people who were around who knew Gene Otto and who handled Robert the Doll were still there. So he captured some very important information.
Mhm.
But Robert's one of the few dolls where he was haunted before it was cool to have a haunted doll.
Mhm.
And where actually the people who were involved with him looked crazy or
Right.
insane. So I think Robert's also the only haunted doll out there that you're going to find where he was documented as haunted before anybody had financial benefit
Right.
or or fame or anything like that.
And they were taking a real risk too by saying something like that in that time.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So
So,
he's a very peculiar doll.
Mhm.
I mean, and there's so many levels to what's going on within him.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and that brings me to the question. Since you talk about all the different stories and the provenance, and there's so many fake stories about Robert that I've seen out there. Because the more I researched for the book, I went down. So I was like, which one's true? Which one's this? So what is the actual story behind Robert the Doll?
Right.
Yeah, it's so funny because somebody just sent me one the other day. I
Mhm.
think it's U.S. Ghost Adventures has a tour somewhere in Florida, and they're telling people that Robert the Doll lived in a antique store there or in a thrift store there for a while. Somebody else is saying that he was up in a retirement home in New York for a while. Everybody's trying to appropriate Robert the Doll's story and be like, Robert the Doll has something to do with this.
Yep.
And that's kind of cool. That's how legends work. And people,
Mhm.
I mean, they want the Bigfoots or the Boogeymans to be near them.
Mhm.
So, uh, but nobody knew the true story of Robert for a long time. And the big thing was, where was he made?
Hmm.
And there was the story of the angry nanny. The family
Mhm.
treated her bad. And in some accounts, it's like, she loved the child, but she was mistreated. In other ones, it's like, oh, she was horribly beaten by the family. And so all of that varied. And I spent a lot of time looking at dolls. Everything. I mean, I hired doll experts on the internet to, try to find it. And none of it was coming to fruition. And then one day I saw a doll and I noticed the stitching around the face and
Hmm.
down the nose. And I go, oh, that's Robert's stitching. And so I looked to see who did that doll. And I saw the Steiff company. And I start looking up Steiff. They're a German company. And they're famous for inventing the teddy bear.
Okay.
And so I look at everything with Steiff, and then I find some other Steiff dolls. And I find some that look just like Robert. I'm like, oh. Robert is absolutely a Steiff. And Steiff identifies their dolls with a button in the ear. Okay. They put a little tiny button that says Steiff. And if you look at Robert closely, you'll realize he doesn't have his original ears.
Oh,
And this happened to a lot of dolls that were actually played with.
Mhm.
You know,
okay.
you look at a kid, the kid's not like, well, let me protect this valuable artifact. The kid's like,
Right.
come on, Robert, we're going, and grabs him by
Yeah.
the ear and drags him.
Yep.
So that's why he was not identified for so long.
Okay.
And once I found out that he was a Steiff doll, that opened up a lot. But then something else really cool that happened, we still had a lot of legends. And you had people going in there with flashlights and trying to say, oh, there's blood all over Robert, because things are showing up under black light. He must have been used in these voodoo blood spells. But then my friend Sharon Wells, who's this brilliant historian in Key West, she had lived at the artist house for a while, and she did a house history. That's what she does, is these house histories. And in her house history of the artist house, she had a photograph of Gene and Ann Otto from their wedding. And I'd found everything I could find in every archive about Jean and Ann Otto. And I'd never seen this. So I asked her, I said, where'd you get that? She said, oh, it's in the box at the library. I said, what box? And she said, oh, there's several boxes of Otto stuff. Now, I'm going to tell you, I was friends with a historian at the library. I talked to him a bunch of times. He knew my interest in Robert the Doll. He didn't even know about these boxes. So when I asked him, he goes, oh, yeah, I think there might be something. And we have in Key West, there's the library, the history room, but then there's a walk-in vault to protect all of the history of the island from hurricanes.
Oh.
And the public's not allowed in there for the most part. But Tom brought me in, Tom Hambright, and it's a massive room. We go to the back, and I see some boxes labeled Otto. There's like 6 of them, 7 of them. And we start pulling them out, and I start going through them. There's letters from Jean and Ann Otto from when they were in France to their family. There's letters between the mother and the sister. There was an article. I mean, there were photos, so many photos. And I spent hundreds, maybe thousands of hours going through this stuff, reading these old letters and piecing things together, because you got little pieces of information. And I was able to identify which legends came from where. I was able to identify who the angry nanny was. I was able to identify why she was angry. And so it's almost like it was all fed to me. It's almost like the universe wanted this story to come out.
I always say, history can never be hidden, no matter how hard you try. It's always going to come out.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, Tiffany, I agree with you so much. And I don't feel like I did anything special except devote my attention.
Right.
And it's almost like by doing that, it opened all these things up, and all these doors started opening and feeding me the things I was looking for. And through that, we were able to discover that, okay, so Robert, created in 1904 in Germany by the Steiff Company, given as a gift to little Jean Otto when he was about 4 years old. And he became inseparable from the doll. He gave it his own name. Okay, his name was Robert Eugene Otto. He went by Jean, gave Robert to the doll. And then whenever he got in trouble for things that kids get in trouble for, he'd say, I didn't do it, Robert did it. So that started the Robert did it trend. And this went on through his adulthood.
Right.
And, and then they say he was abusive towards his wife. I don't think it was physical abuse. Definitely there was a dynamic going on with them. And he was jealous of her talents.
Oh, wow.
But they say he used to lock her into a closet and slam the door shut and say, and when people confronted him, he'd say, I didn't do it, Robert did it. And
how interesting.
And, that's one of the cool things. You hear those legends. I talked to one of their best friends who lived across the street, and he didn't want to talk about Robert. He thought Robert ruined the Otto's reputation because she was a talented pianist. He was a talented artist. And now, now anything anybody talks about is Robert the Doll, which neither of them would have wanted for their legacy.
Right.
But so he told me all these stories about Jean and Ann, and I said, what about Robert? Was he in that? Because this guy bought the house from Ann after Jean died.
Okay.
I said, what about Robert? Was that doll there? And he said, oh, I should have burned that doll.
Oh, wow.
He said, it's destroyed their legacy. He goes, yeah, he was there. And I said, where was he? He said, he was up in Jean's bedroom. Jean and Ann had separate bedrooms. Okay. And he was in a cedar chest. And so Bill Geiser is this guy's name. He told me, he said, oh yeah. I said to Ann, I said, does Robert come with the house too? And she said, I hate that effing doll. It was Gene's best friend. Of course, he never could make any friends on his own anyway.
Wow.
So hearing that from their family friend who hated the Robert story,
Yeah.
to me, that was a really good indication that the things that we had read and, the stories that we had heard had some validity to them.
Hmm.
Him sharing that his best friend hated the doll
Yeah.
and talked about it being Gene's best friend.
Yeah. And it's so like, it's just, I mean, for lack of a better word, it's just so not normal for a person to act that way toward any kind of object, whether it be a doll, anything. So I have a question I want to ask you. When you take into account a tulpa versus an egregore, and a tulpa being, the manifestation of a spirit or energy by a single person, whereas an egregore is a manifestation of a spirit by a group of people. Everything you know about Robert, do you think somehow Gene created a tulpa that attached itself to the doll? And over time, with people hearing the stories, it kind of turned into an egregore.
I used to think that,
Okay.
and part of me used to think that. So there's some things about Gene that I can't talk about, but that people can probably figure out if they look at his story enough.
Okay.
And I think as a kid, and when there were things that he couldn't talk about, I think that he placed a lot of his emotion on Robert, and Robert was a way of him dealing with certain aspects of his life.
Okay.
Um, so I thought for a long time that maybe it was just him putting so much emotion into the
Hmm.
doll.
Hmm.
But then we started realizing there were multiple entities within the doll.
Hmm.
And when and it took some time for me to realize that. And it was when I figured out who the angry nanny was and that she had lost a daughter.
Hmm.
And I realized, I'm like, one of these spirit, the spirit in Robert is the child spirit of the angry nanny. Okay. And her name was Emmeline Abbott. So I call the daughter Abby, because we don't
Okay.
know her name. We just have the
Okay.
census records showing her death between 1900 and 1910.
Okay.
And with realizing that, I thought, great, I figured it out. This is the little child, Robert. And then because I'd found all the information in the library, I started writing the book about it. And I thought Robert would be very happy. It's like, hey, I solved everything. It's like in the movies. It's going to be a happy ending. But then I started going through the worst hell of my life. And I was
Oh,
being
wow.
attacked. There were horrible things that were absolutely possession. And I was being attacked by spirits. And I'd never dealt with anything this intense. And I
Hmm.
could not figure out why Robert was attacking me, because I thought I was being helpful. And that's
Hmm.
when I realized there were multiple entities. And some of my friends involved in Santeria came in and they helped remove these other spirits from me. And I was thinking, okay, there's at least 3 spirits that are Robert. There's the child spirit, and then these two, they're 2 very huge dark shadows
Hmm.
that surround him that are always there. And those were the ones that I thought were the bad ones. Um, but then as time went on, it was when the Discovery Channel did their documentary. Uh, Cindy Cindy Kaza or
Hmm.
Kaza was
Mhm.
was the psychic who came down, and she picked up on it, and um, she said, "Oh, there's a portal in Robert,"
Oh, wow.
and that kind of made it click. My friend Haley Castellano, she worked with Robert for a long time at the fort, and she's very intuitive. And she had always described, that there's this child spirit there. and that these other spirits are around it kind of as protectors. And so when people come in and they flip Robert off or, mock Robert,
Yeah.
it's not like you have to ask permission. I think that's the stupidest thing. And I hate that people say, "Oh, did you ask permission?" It's so dumb to ask permission from a spirit. And it's, "Can I take your picture?" What's Robert going to do? Yeah, sure. Take my picture.
Yeah.
It's that irritates me so much, the ask permission. But I mean, that's part of legends. I mean, that's the way they go.
Right.
But Haley talked about, she said, when people come in and disrespect the doll, they're disrespecting the little girl.
Mm,
And when they disrespect the little girl spirit, you get these other spirits who are around there. Okay.
I see.
And they don't like that. So the person who's been disrespectful, they'll latch onto them and they follow them home
I see.
and they'll infiltrate their thoughts. And they'll start locking their doors. They'll lock them into their basements. They'll strike them with lightning. They'll leave dead deers on their yard. They do all these things and cause the accidents and cause the problems and cause all this chaos that makes people go crazy and say, "I'm writing a letter to Robert," because people can't help but coming to that
Right.
conclusion when
Mhm.
the string of misfortune doesn't stop.
Hmm.
And then when they write that letter, this entity who's followed them sees them writing the letter. They probably go right back with the letter itself because their purpose is to protect the child. And
Right.
I loved it when, going beyond, I suggested there were multiple entities, but then when it was suggested there was the portal, it clicked so well because you can have dozens of people claiming that they're haunted by Robert at the same time.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was
And I don't
going to ask that. Yeah. Like if
and I
there's
don't think
only
those are
two
wrong.
dark spirits around it, then you have, I mean, how many visitors does Robert get each day even?
Yeah,
And
and
people
I think
claim
some
that bad
people
things
just
are
have bad
happening.
stuff happen in life, and they're like, "Well, I saw Robert, it must be his fault." So there's a
Right.
degree of
Yeah.
that, but you see these similarities like with lightning strikes and with dead deer on the yard. There's certain things that Robert seems to do,
Mm,
and when you have so many of them happening, it makes sense that, yeah, it doesn't matter how many people, if you and I always tell people, it's not like Robert's gonna curse you through the screen, okay? Looking at a picture of Robert is not gonna cause you harm. It's people who are there in person who disrespect him.
yeah.
And you can't just show up and be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't ask for a photo." The people who have the problems are the ones who are aggressive and who
Yeah.
challenge him.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, it's the same thing, when, and you as a paranormal investigator, this, when you're on a case, you're respectful. You don't go in and try and provoke and, cause chaos. You go in and you be respectful.
Yeah.
And, it's the same, when you go into a museum, any kind of museum,
Yeah.
you don't go in and you don't go in to cause chaos, bottom line.
Right.
So that makes complete sense if Robert is, if he is inhabited by a whole bunch of spirits,
Yeah.
like that would piss any ghost off. So
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, one question that I was thinking of while we were talking is over time, you've known Robert 30 years. How have her, how do I word this? How has his demeanor or his personality changed over the years, if it has? Or do you think he's kind of just stayed the same?
No, he's definitely changed. When I first started, when Robert was locked up in the back of the museum, his spirit was not at the museum.
Mhm.
Okay, his spirit was very active at the artist house.
Okay.
mm,
And we used to go by and we'd tell stories there and we'd see so much activity. And then when he was put out on display, because I told people on the ghost tour, I said, call the museum, ask them to bring Robert out. And because again, ghosts, you can understand a museum back in 1996, they were more about history, and ghosts would take away from what they were telling.
Yeah.
Okay, so at the time, people were like, no, we don't need that. He can stay in the back. But I kind of started a campaign. I said, go to the museum, go to the museum, go to the museum and ask. And ghost tours were very new. So it wasn't a lot of people, 10 people one night, 20 people the next night. And enough people started going up there that they put him in a display case with some other Key West characters. There was like the Iguana Man and the Cookie Lady. And back then, you'd have been able to slide that little case right open because it didn't lock. You would have been able to shake Robert's hand and nobody would have cared. And the people, God, that's when things started going crazy. Everybody at the museum started noticing things. Small staff at the museum. They'd, the one person locking up at night, they'd leave. They'd come back in the next morning. There'd be a chair sitting in front of Robert's case.
Wow.
They'd find little footprints. And there was all types of interesting stuff going on.
Wow.
And so that's when his story started spreading. And I'm going off from what the original question was. So, but Robert's legend really started to grow, and that's when he started messing with cameras. And and people would go in there, battery cameras. Robert was hungry for energy, so batteries started draining. And what I noticed is, as activity started picking up at the fort, once they put him out on display, the energy at the artist house changed, and the feminine presence took over.
Oh,
And I think that was Ann Otto, and I think it was Jean Otto's mother, and I think it was the little girl spirit. And there's completely a feminine presence that dominates that place to this day, where you really don't feel Robert. And I think it's almost, like Anne was kind of screwed out of the house in the will. Jean wrote her out of the will.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. And I think that's where the cruelty rumors come from.
Okay.
They say that he mistreated her. What happened is the Otto family wasn't as wealthy as everybody says. After Thomas Otto, Jean's father, died, he was a doctor. But the money dried up and they were struggling. And you see this in the family letters, and they were very close to losing their house on a number of occasions. So, so they were not doing so good. And Jean may have married Anne for her money because she came from a wealthy Massachusetts family. And I think he was after her money, and her mom certainly thought he was after her money. So her mom wrote him out of her will, and he got upset, and in exchange wrote his own wife out of his will. So when he died, she gave up her career. She gave up everything for this guy. And when he died, she got nothing.
So do you think that's why she's still at the house?
I think that's part of it. I think that's part of it. I mean, there's so many dynamics that we can only speculate on.
Yeah.
And without being there, it's hard to know. But I think he manipulated her, and I think he used her as a beard for his entire life, and then left her with nothing. And she gave up her promising career.
Yeah. She was an actress. Is that right? Was she an actress?
She was a pianist.
Okay.
But she was so good. I mean, she was on a tour of Europe when the two of them met. They met in France, and he was an artist. He was working to become an artist, and he was very acclaimed for his art in Key West because he captured the sunlight like nobody could. But she gave up her career to be the artist's wife. And, she had gone to the homemaking schools, and the newspaper articles is talking about how he's very stern and in charge, and she's using his mom's recipes and making the lemon cakes and the key lime pies and the different, and she was so much more than, and you look at the pictures of her and you talk to the people who knew her, and
Yeah.
she was the superstar,
Mm.
gave up everything to support him. And then he screwed her over in the end.
Yeah.
Now he had Parkinson's,
Okay.
so his last 10 years, he might not have been all there mentally.
Hmm.
I think some of the stories about him, him being up there talking to Robert for his last years. I talked to a niece who confirmed, that Anne hated him being up in that top room. She had to go up and down the stairs with all the dishes and all the stuff all the time. And it was just him and Robert up there.
Oh, wow.
But Parkinson's can do things. The medicines with Parkinson's can do things, and you can have hallucinations.
Mhm.
So maybe he was, maybe that's when he was talking to the doll. I think it goes deeper than that.
Mhm.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Definitely sounds like it.
I found some really interesting things. You'd think after 30 years with the doll that I'd know everything, but maybe like a year ago, a little over a year ago, just some new incredible information came up. So,
Yeah, I know you texted earlier that you had found German folklore ties and elementals.
yeah.
Do you mind sharing about that?
Yeah. So here's something really interesting. The first thing I discovered were all of these ties between everybody who has cared for Robert the doll, and every one of them has a Key West, Pennsylvania, Germany connection. Okay. So you go back to the first connection, the first person to really care for Robert the doll was Gene Otto.
Mhm.
His grandfather came over from Germany, and he came to Philadelphia and then went to Harrisburg, where he became, he was a doctor. Okay. And he joined the army in Harrisburg, and that took him to Florida and then to the Dry Tortugas and then Key West.
Mhm.
The next caretaker of Robert the doll was Myrtle Reuter, and she's the one who pretty much bought the house from the Ottos. Bill Geiser bought it for her, but Myrtle, she was from Harrisburg. Her family had German roots. She married Bill Reuter, who was from Philadelphia, and his family was from Germany. And then his dad he had a Navy contract for selling trailers in Key West. So the Navy ended up bringing them to Key West. And then after Myrtle Reuter, she donates the doll to the museum, and I arrived shortly after that. And that's when I became involved with Robert. The first David L. Sloan, he was in Philadelphia. He married a German woman in Harrisburg, and then he joined the Army for the Civil War. He was in the Pennsylvania 47th Volunteers. His Civil War regiment was in charge of Key West during the Civil War. They built the fort where Robert the doll is.
Wow.
So you get all these, and you could say coincidence, but the three primary caretakers of Robert the doll having these Key West, Pennsylvania, German connections with the military involvement.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that's peculiar. And I start looking into it. And then I'm thinking, wait a minute. I'm like, Tom Hambright. I wouldn't be in Key West without him, and wouldn't know about Robert the doll without him. He was the historian. I researched his family history. Pennsylvania German, Key West. Daryl Meyer, who owned the Artist House and told me about Robert the doll. Daryl Meyer, Pennsylvania German. The guy who had written the book, the other Meyer, I forget his first name at the moment. Another Pennsylvania German. And I have a list of about 30 Pennsylvania German connections that have helped me on my journey with Robert. And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And I start looking up German voodoo. And it's like, well, there's not really any German voodoo. There's something called Brucari, and I might pronounce that wrong, but it's also called powwow medicine.
Mhm.
It's a specific type of voodoo medicine that came to Pennsylvania with German doctors.
Okay. Interesting.
And it's right in that area where Dr. Otto was.
Huh.
And so I'm looking at that and I think, wow, okay, so you've got this German magic, it comes over, it's really formed over there where they practice this medicine by calling on the spirits. And
Mm.
the barn hex symbols that you see throughout Pennsylvania are all part of this too.
Okay.
But what I suspect happened is, there were 3 generations of doctors in the Otto family. And I think Joseph Otto passed this hex magic on to his son Thomas, who was Jean's father. And I
Okay.
think when the nanny had the sick child, obviously she's going to go to the doctor she works for when her child's sick or injured or whatever happened.
Right.
I believe that they used this hex magic, which is
On the
basically,
child.
voodoo.
Okay.
And I think the child died as a result. And then
Oh
because
no.
of that, the mom said, "Oh, you know, you killed my child. You're going to suffer like I suffered. I'm going to go do some real voodoo magic." And I think that's when she reached out to probably Santeria or
Okay.
Obeah. She was Bahamian. So, there was
Okay.
all of
Yeah.
that stuff happening in Key West at the time. So I think there was almost some reverse spell put on there so that the family suffered as much.
That makes a lot of sense because I was going to ask, this doll, is it true that they didn't know who sent the doll? It just kind of showed up. Is that correct?
That's what they used to say. The angry nanny built the doll, but
Oh, I didn't hear that. Okay. Okay.
I identified it as a Steiff, and I went to Germany last year and went to the
Hmm.
Steiff factory, and I went
Hmm.
into the factory where he was built, and they have this great museum there, and I was able to find uh, almost twins of Robert.
Oh
He
wow.
was a
Okay.
clown originally, and he's very rare. He would have been used as a
Oh,
display in a window to sell
okay.
smaller dolls.
Okay.
Um, so. Um, But in 1904, I confirmed like the year that he would have been created there. And we believe, the Ottos were from Germany, so they exchanged gifts with family.
Hmm.
And so we think it was given as a gift to Gene on his birthday. That's what the legends had said. So that kind of makes sense. And that was probably
Okay.
passed down from the family.
Okay. Yeah, because I was going to ask, like, you know, it wouldn't just show up and just automatically be cursed. Like
No,
something had to have happened. Something happened within the family dynamic. Something happened to create what took place.
yeah. You want to hear something cool, Tiffany?
Sure.
So, as I'm discovering all this Pennsylvania German magic, there was someone who came on the tour, and so the doll that's behind me,
Yes, I was going to ask about
yeah,
that too.
I call her Abby,
Oh,
and that's because the child spirit was the daughter of Emmeline Abbott.
uh-huh.
So last year for a Fantasy Fest, which is the Mardi Gras in Key West, uh, Robert and I were grand marshals, and we rode down Duval Street in a casket on a forklift. But of course, the museum takes care of Robert as an artifact. So they're not going to let
Right.
the real Robert the doll go out in a parade with 80,000 people.
I see. Okay.
So what we did, and it was done to a degree, for press, but I had this recreation of Robert that I was working on to try to you know, understand Robert. And so I took it up to the museum and I invited the little girl spirit into it.
Oh,
And I said, "Hey, Abby, uh, we're doing a parade, and I think you'll like the parade a lot. And you can't go inside of this artifact because it's very fragile. But I've made one that's very similar, so you feel comfortable. And inside of that one, that's actually the shell that I created it from was a little black girl. It was a black girl doll,
Oh, wow.
and I rebuilt everything around that.
Hmm.
But I said, if you want to come into this doll, I'll take care of you. I'll take you to the parade. You can go wherever you want, but I think you're going to enjoy it. And so I did that. And the interesting thing was, as soon as I did that, it got heavier.
The doll did. The doll
And
behind you.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Wow.
felt the weight go on it. And there was a guy standing there, and he was coming through the museum, and he was just looking. He didn't know what was going on. And I said, do you want to hold her? He said, yeah, sure. He held her. He started just crying, and he felt this intense emotion.
Yeah.
So I felt like I feel like she's there.
Okay.
And what ended up happening, so after the parade, I kept her at my house
Uh-huh.
because I thought, let's give you a break from all these people coming in the museum doing the same thing.
Right.
People
Yeah.
coming up, not acknowledging the child spirit, just being like, oh, look at this. Oh, let me do that.
Mhm.
So, and then a friend of mine asked me if I could give some friends a tour. It was Corey, who's the singer for a band called Living Color,
Mhm.
and
Okay. Yeah.
his wife Jo. She's huge into Robert, and my friend said, "Would you be able to show them around?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So I brought Abby back up, and I set her inside by the tunnel. There's a yellow fever tunnel in the fort,
Mhm.
and so I set her there, and I started giving them the tour. And Jo, oh God, she had such incredible energy. And my spirit guide told me, said, "This is the most powerful person you're ever going to meet. She is me." And then Jo picked up on so much energy and picked up on everything. And
Mhm.
then when I was sending her down the tunnel where we usually get soldiers, she stops and she kind of leans down. And I'm like, oh my God, she's talking to a child. And we never get children in that tunnel.
Yeah.
And I said to Corey, I go, she's talking to a little girl. What's she doing talking to a little girl? And Corey didn't know that there's no little girls back there. But when she came out, I said, what just happened? And she said, oh, it was the little girl, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what's the little girl doing back there? And then I look over and I realized that I had set Abby right by there.
Oh.
And so I'm like, that's freaking amazing. And then the
Mhm.
next day, Jo called me and she said, I had a visitor last night.
Oh.
Now, the visitor that she had, what she described something that I had experienced
Mm.
with a creature that I'd never really talked about. And I'd gone on a vacation where I was kind of trapped. I was following the first David Sloan Civil War trail,
Mhm.
and
Okay.
everything that could go wrong went wrong. I mean, it was the worst, the worst, the worst. And it finally got to the point where I'm like, that's it. I can't do this anymore. And I turned in the rental car and I booked a flight to go home immediately because it was that bad. And not just like, oh,
Wow.
little misfortune. This was,
Yeah.
I was cursed.
Wow.
And my wife had left the trip halfway through. I mean, everything was so, so, so terrible. And as soon as I made that, that the arrangements to leave, the energy in the hotel room changed. And it wasn't like I went to sleep, but it was kind of like I fell into this relaxation. And then I
Mhm.
thought I was having a heart attack and I was convinced I was dying. I thought, oh, this is it. And I grabbed my heart and I turned over on my right-hand side and this thing slid out of me.
Wow.
And to make me sound even more insane, it looked like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. It was like this goblin creature. It was formed like it was shaped exactly like my body, but smaller, and it rolled out. And I remember its face, and I remember the sound it made. I remember the scream, and it was surprised. It was like surprised it was being ejected from my body. So I'm thinking I'm dying. I'm like, and the thing slides across the bed and disappears. So the thing that Joe describes was very similar.
Mm.
And it had come to her. And when she described the sound and everything it made, and I'm like, oh my God, she's seen it too. And I asked her, see, because the best I could figure was I thought that the little girl inside of Robert had attached to me. And when I went on vacation, she didn't know I was going on vacation and she wanted to be back at the fort. So I thought it was like the little girl, maybe she was deformed looking because she was 117 years old.
Mhm.
So I asked Joe, I said, is it the little girl? And she goes, oh, no, it's an elemental. It's an earth elemental.
Mm.
I
Okay.
didn't know a lot about elementals. You know, I'd heard of them, but I never really looked into them. And when I looked up elementals, they were first written about by Paracelsus, who was a scientist. And he wrote about them in the Black Forest of Germany.
Mm.
And elementals are spirits that are attached to earth, wind, fire, water.
Mhm.
And the earth elementals, they can be tree spirits, things like
Yes.
that. And so when I see all this stuff, I think, holy hell, Robert the doll is stuffed with Excelsior,
Oh.
which is a tightly spun wood wool.
Yep.
And I thought, oh, where did the Stife Company get their wood wool? And so I started looking into it, and they'd source it locally from where they were. I can't pronounce the town. It's like the town is like Jingzhen. But they sourced their wood wool from the Black Forest. So
Wow.
it all clicked right then. Grimm's fairy tales are all written in the Black Forest.
Mhm.
You know, all of these stories come from there. And fairy tales, we look at them and say, oh, it's a fake story. But fairy tales were very real for everybody who was experiencing them then. And it's
Yes.
no different than a ghost story for us now. And
Yes. Yeah.
I think as paranormal entertainment blurs with real paranormal, ghost stories are starting to become, synonymous with fairy tale. But I don't think that takes away the reality from the people who experience it. So I
No, not at all. Yeah.
think there's this magic and there's this enchantment that exists in that forest and in those elements. And I believe that Robert was made and infused with an elemental. And so I'm uncovering all this stuff. I'm thinking, oh my God, what a discovery. And then I go back because I go back and reread what I found about Robert a lot.
Mhm.
And going back, he was always called the enchanted doll.
Yeah.
It was all right there from the beginning. So I don't think Robert's evil. I think there's an elemental spirit. I think that's what attracted the little girl. I think that's what attracts these other spirits. I think it's just this incredible energy force, but it's not evil. It's magic.
Yes.
And what I've found, Robert's taken me through absolute hell, but also brought me some of the best things in my life. So I
Mhm.
think it's like any of those fairy tales where it's like, come on, step into the forest with me.
Yeah.
And you step into the forest on this adventure. And I think Robert takes people on the adventure that they need or that they're ready for.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And it's not going to be easy. But when you come out the other side, you're a different person.
Yeah, and that's one thing I've always said. You were talking about the stories. I've always said that these stories, even Dracula and Frankenstein and all of these folk tales had to come from some type of personal experience. I mean, we have
Yeah.
great imaginations,
Yeah.
but I don't feel our imaginations can come up with this stuff out of thin air.
No.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
No.
It all stems from some kind of truth, whether it's true for somebody, and
Right.
that's what drives the story.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think, with paranormal, the thing I don't like about the paranormal communities today is all the people who are crapping on each other and trying to say that they know the right way to be paranormal. And and you see it with the old school people trying to make fun of the new school people and saying, "Oh, there's no demons. Everything's not demon." Or anybody who's attacking anybody else's paranormal, whether it's an argument about orbs or whether it's an argument, I don't like it because paranormal is so personal.
Yes.
And science is nowhere near close to catching up with the personal experience, with the human experience.
Yeah.
I mean, science is science is like a kindergarten student in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
And every day you'll see new articles about how what we thought was science is wrong.
Mhm.
And critics will say pseudoscience or things like that. The fact is, us as humans, I think the universe delivers us incredible things. And I think through the paranormal, it delivers it. And, maybe the paranormal is a psychologist for us. Maybe it helps us through these different things. But I think there's a greater force that's carrying us through our lives and delivering things at the times that they're meant to be there.
Yeah.
And if that means that it's a speck of dust working as an orb that sends us a message, maybe that's what it is. When I was in kindergarten, that's what really got me into spirits. Mrs. Uberseter was my kindergarten, Pennsylvania German. She had a spirit in her house, and she'd tell us the stories every morning. And she told us, "I'm going to show you the picture on the last day of class." And she did. She showed us this slide photograph, and that started my fascination.
Yeah.
With the other world. If there had been a student sitting there beside me saying, "That's not a ghost, that's a reflection of light because cameras work this way and that way," think where I'd be now.
Yeah.
What would I be doing?
Yeah. Yeah. I always say, "You do you, boo."
Yeah.
That's my thing. I say it almost daily.
Yeah, and I think it's so important for
It is.
people to do that because, we're all just working through things.
Mhm. Yeah.
And the universe does provide, and anybody who's working against our path is not helping.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what makes us individual. We all have our own path, and we are allowed to follow the path that we choose to take.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you, if Robert is made with this tree fiber from the Black Forest,
Yeah.
where they were sourcing the fiber from, do you think there are other dolls out there that are also inhabited by an elemental from the
Yes.
forest?
And I want to tell you about this. So, can we take a 2-minute break? And I'm going to grab the book, and then
Yep.
I'm going to tell you about this one because I don't remember all the details or the name, but it's the most incredible story.
Okay.
Okay. I'll pull you out of the thing and just come back and I'll bring you back in.
Great. I'll be right back.
How interesting.
Yes. And so I'm just
Philip
looking
says,
at
"Oh, I know Fantasy Fest from the good old days at the Oasis Coral Tree." I have never been down to Key West. I need to get down there.
For me, it's been since the 90s. I probably was in Key West 2 years after David got there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've never been further south than Orlando.
No, and we were booking a cruise for next October, and I purposely selected one that stops in Key West.
Nice.
Just so I could go back.
Nice. We've been talking about taking a cruise, so that's an idea.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Very cool.
Yeah. So while we're waiting for him real quick, I guess we can just talk about a few things at the end, just in case we go over and don't get done with everything. But thank you, everybody who has been watching today. I know it was NSPS TV Paranormal Podcast was on earlier from Central Texas. And other than that, if you guys see anything, have any questions, or just want to bring up some ideas for future shows, make sure you comment in the chat. But you can always follow us on Facebook. If you're on Facebook right now, you know where to go. Make sure you click that like button to catch any upcoming events and activities. Then, of course, catch the replay of all of our shows on YouTube. And I'm still working on it, but we do have that website. It's
We do.
it's sitting there with a little placeholder. But one thing I am looking forward to is next week's show as well. We have an amazing panel discussion with paranormal authors. We have Sin Schrader Hill joining us, Alex Matsuo, Steve Beltrusas will be joining us, but he has to leave early. And then Mark Muncy will be joining us late. So we will have at least 3 at any given time talking about all of the paranormal books that they have written. So that should be a fun
That's
one.
That's going to be fun. That's going to be really fun.
And then the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, we have Decker Stoker rejoining us for another talk about Stoker on Stoker. And then he's also going to be talking about his new Stoker wines that have just made their way to America.
Ooh.
Yeah, so that
I didn't know that.
Yes,
Okay.
they just made their way here. So, and we can
Very, very cool.
bring David back. Welcome back, David.
Hey. So check this out. There's a book that I highly recommend. It's called The Queen of Whale Cay. And it's about Jo Carstairs, the fastest woman on water. So she was I think she had a big inheritance, but she ended up buying an island in the Bahamas, and she had a Stife doll that she treated like a human.
Oh.
And I'm looking to see if there's any photos in the book. Anyway, if for everybody watching, oh wait, he's going to be here. If you look her up, you'll find her Stife doll and the bizarre story about how she and him ruled this island. And they had servants come in, and they all thought the doll was alive.
Wow.
And listen, for it to be a Stife. Oh, look, so can you see on the cover? Can you see him right there?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think his name. It's like Lord Watley or something. But if you look up the Queen of Whale Cay, and if you read the book, absolutely insane the number of parallels. And this is a doll stuffed with the same things that Robert stuffed with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what are the chances?
Yeah. Yeah. That's really interesting.
And you look at kids who are entranced by these certain dolls.
Mm-hmm.
I think the people, nowadays they're made in factories and nobody really cares. But when you look at the Stife Company and their story, they cared.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were putting their hearts and souls into these dolls.
Yeah.
And I have no doubt that they were infused with magic. And if you talked to me like 2 years ago and said magic, I'd have been like, yeah, whatever, parlor tricks, things like that. Through Robert, I've discovered this magic of the universe. I mean, when I found out all that stuff about Germany, my wife and I took a trip there, and we, the kindergarten teacher that I mentioned, because of all these Pennsylvania German connections, I reached out to her and I said, why did you start telling us about these ghosts? You're the first one in this Pennsylvania German line. And she told me the story. She said, well, my husband and I had moved in this farmhouse in Pennsylvania. It had been owned by a doctor. It was supposed to be on a Native American burial ground. And she said they woke up the first night and she heard like the squirrels going crazy behind the walls. And she looks up and there was this symbol on the wall. It was like a circle of light with a line coming down from it. And she gets up because there are no street lights. And she got up and thought maybe there's a car outside. and she puts her hand in front of it. It was in the wall, and she
Oh,
thought, "Oh my
wow.
God, it's on fire." And she put her hand up against it, but it was cool to the touch. So she wakes her husband up. She's like, "Look." He looks at it and he said, "I see what you're looking at, but I want nothing to do with this."
Ah, yeah.
And he goes back to sleep. And she said, then the symbol faded away. And the squirrels, if that's what they were, got quiet.
Oh, wow.
And that's when paranormal activity started. And she started telling us the stories. So I looked up that symbol. And the first thing that came up in my search was the Irminsul, which was the pagan tree. A tree that the pagan tribes worshipped, and there's probably multiple Irminsuls, but it tied into pagan tree worship. And the story is that Charlemagne came in to force Christianity on the pagans and cut down their tree and
Yep.
build a church on top of it.
Yeah.
So I see that as symbol. I'm like, okay. And Charlemagne's my 40th great grandfather. He's probably both of your 40th great grandfathers too. You go that far back. But the first ruler of the Holy Roman Empire was Otto the Great.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Jean Otto, his sister Mitzvah did this great family history, and it talks about how they're descended directly from Otto the Great.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got this symbol and this pagan stuff and this tree magic going on, and it all ties into the Otto family.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went over there to kind of explore all the different tree magic over in Germany. And one of the things when I was exploring the German magic, there are these creatures called kobolds.
Yes, I've heard of those. Mm-hmm.
And you'll find similar ones in a lot of cultures, but the kobolds, they're helpful.
Mm-hmm.
They're practical jokers. And they're very nice until you cross them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you cross them, you're screwed.
Yeah.
And this aligns very much with Robert the Doll.
Mm.
And they have these kobolds. Some of them live in caves and help the miners. Cobalt is named after the kobolds because they hoped they were finding like good minerals, and then like, it's just cobalt. So my wife and I, we spent a day searching for kobolds, and we went to this one touristic underground cave and learned some good history. And then we went to a cave in the middle of nowhere that has a river running through it, or a little stream.
Mm-hmm.
And we hired a guide who met us there to take us in. And this is supposed to be the birthplace of the kobolds. And there's all these stories in Germany about how they lived there, and how somebody tried to trick them, because you can't see. I think it's you can't see them as long as they're wearing their hat. They take their hat off, you can see them. And somebody tried to trick them, and then somebody stomped on one of them and killed them, and they all sought fury and left.
Okay.
So we go through this underground cave, treading through the underground stream. And so a day searching for kobolds, and then we get to the town where we're staying for the night. And my wife found a great restaurant. She's really good at finding restaurants. And this one was called like Der Hull. And we get there, it's a 1,500-year-old medieval tavern.
Oh, no, that's awesome.
And the name of it ends up meaning like to hell.
Oh, wow.
And it was full, so we're waiting for a table, and we're like, yeah, no problem, we'll wait. When they seated us, so these kobolds, they're hearth spirits. In the household, they'll live in the fireplace. So they seated us in the fireplace of this medieval tavern the day we've been searching for kobolds.
Wow.
Which I've never eaten in a fireplace before.
Was it? I mean, I'm assuming it was like just this huge,
it was
enormous,
massive. I mean,
yeah.
For the medieval tavern, it was meant to
castle.
eat a big place. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, we sat at a table, but it's like I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe we're sitting in.
Yeah.
So, and again, so it's like all the things with the universe lining up. And we'd done something where I tried to extract another spirit from Robert the Doll. There are dolls called Al Ruans. And again, I might be pronouncing that wrong. You know, I read these things and I've never heard them spoken, but they're root dolls. And like Harry Potter has the mandrakes, and they're not so different from that. You know, a lot of the fantasy stuff comes from these real roots, real roots. So what I did, we did a Robert the Doll weekend, and with these root dolls, they're passed down through the family to the youngest son. And one of the legends that always bothered me about Robert the Doll, they say that his grandfather had bought the doll from a man who sold those kind of things on a boat from the Tortugas. Now, in the Dry Tortugas, his grandfather died, you know, before Jean was born. So he didn't give him the doll. Right. But during the Civil War, you know, that's when he was a surgeon over the Dry Tortugas. And that's when my great-great-great-grandfather would have been there too. Pennsylvania 47th, Germans, all Germans. I mean, like a huge percentage Germans. So they would have had these Alaron root dolls. And you think during wartime, yeah, somebody was probably selling these little root dolls.
Yeah.
And you know, these protective spirits. And when you don't know what's going to happen with your life, you want something to believe in.
Yep.
So one of my theories is that Jean's grandfather purchased one of these dolls. And so he had this household spirit that he brought back. And then it's passed down. When he dies, it's passed down to the youngest son, which is Thomas, Jean's father. When Thomas dies, it's passed down to Jean, his youngest son. But then when Jean dies, where does it go? Jean doesn't have any kids except Robert.
Right.
So I think that spirit may have been one that was passed into the doll.
Okay.
And just a theory.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I'm not going to say that's definitely what happened. But so we did a seance, and during the Robert the Doll weekend, we had the guys who founded Michigan Paracon, and then Dustin Pari was there. And I invited this spirit, this elemental or this cabal or whatever it was. I made a root doll.
Okay.
And I invited it into this box. And I said, I'm going to go to Germany. I'll take you. I'll return you back. And when I did that, I felt something go into the box. But then it went straight through the box and it went into my arms and it went into me. And I freaked out because I'd had that happen before. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. And Dustin Pari was there and he could tell I was freaking out. And he goes, okay, let's do this, blah, blah, blah. And Dustin took over, and Dustin was able to completely get whatever was going on out of there.
And Dustin, with his very just calm demeanor, I can see him just going in there and
you know, Dustin is very much, you know, he's very much a Christian, and he approaches the paranormal from that way. And I'd always had an aversion to that. I'd bad stuff happen growing up as a Catholic, and so I'd always been against that. But the way he did that, and it made me rethink everything. And so and again, that's probably part of my journey, but the way that dissipated. So then I took that box, and when we went to Germany, it was May 8th, and I went to release it in the Black Forest at midnight that night. And that was my birthday. And it was funny, on that day, the new Pope was named, and the guy's name was Robert. He became Leo. Leo's Robert the Doll's lion.
Wow.
More coincidence stuff. But I went out into the middle of the Black Forest, and I let this thing go, if there even was anything there. And the Black Forest is called the Black Forest because it's so dark. I mean, so
Mhm.
thick with trees.
Yeah.
And it was pitch dark. I had a little headlamp on. I had a flashlight. And so I let the thing go and I buried the box. And then I started walking back out. And after about 5-10 minutes, I realized I'm like, oh, I don't have my lights on. I was able to see without any light. I could see in the dark.
Wow. Wow.
And I started when I realized that, I was like, what? And I started closing my eyes and opening them to see if there was any difference. And I could see fine, no matter which I did. And I got to where I couldn't tell if my eyes were open or closed.
Mm.
And I was able to navigate out of the forest. And it was an incredible experience. And I overshot where I was supposed to go back down to where we were staying. And then up ahead, there was this beautiful field. It looked like a field of wheat. And so I went to it and I'm like, I'm going to lay down in this. I'd had a few beers. So I lay down and I look up and the moon, it was a gibbous moon.
Mhm.
So almost full.
Mhm.
But I'm looking up at it and I said, oh my God, this couldn't get any better. And then this white streak appears across the sky. It was an airplane leaving a trail, but it made that symbol that my kindergarten teacher had described.
Ah.
And yeah, so I mean, I have no doubt that there's magic going on around Robert the Doll.
It sounds like there's a lot of connections with you and the past and possibly the future
Yeah,
if this keeps going.
yeah.
What do you think is supposed to come out of this? If there is anything that's supposed to come out of this, all the connections from Germany to Pennsylvania, Key West, what do you think the spirits and Robert are trying to accomplish if this theory is true?
I thought that there was going to be like some big Hollywood movie ending to it. You know, like when I saw that symbol, I'm like, oh my God, this is it. And then I had that symbol show up later on a clock that I bought in a little village in Germany where my 6th great grandfather was a clockmaker. And it's actually that, I think the clock's right back there, but anyway, I think it's all about, for me, and again, I think it's all very personal, but I think for me, the most astounding thing, realizing that I've been on this journey that was predetermined from kindergarten, you know, that kindergarten set me on this journey. I'd like to think that I help other people understand things through Robert the Doll, but I think most of it has been about me coming to this realization that I've never been alone, that I've always been supported. And, you know, we touched a little bit on like the religious aspect, and I turned very much against religion early on. And there's the tree of life that most religions will talk about. Okay. And if you look at the Kabbalah, you know, there's different elements of it there. It's stuff that people can look up on their own. But everybody talks about finding the good elements of the world, like, you know, the tree of life and going to the light and all this great stuff. What you don't hear a lot about is the tree of death. Okay. And if you look up this tree of death, the theory is, or what the teachings say, is that the light was filling up the tree of life and some of that light overflowed and it went down into the darkness. And there's people who go through the darkness to find the light. And you bring that light back up. And so I think mine's very much been a journey of darkness and going through that forest and then coming out the other side. And yeah, it's not like dark and light are bad. They're both necessary for either one to exist.
Right.
So for
Right.
me, it was a personal journey. It was my journey through the forest.
Mhm.
And, going through the darkness to find the light.
Yeah.
And to think, here I am, like 55 years later, making these revelations. It's comforting to know that there's been a plan all along.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. And I know we've spent a lot of time talking about Robert the Doll, but one thing I did want to touch on today, because we only have about 30 minutes left, is you had mentioned that you have other haunted artifacts on display in Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I started collect. I think it's funny when people talk about haunted artifacts nowadays because there are so many of them, and I do have theories on them, and I do think that things can hold energy, and I love that we're at a time when people are directing energy to these objects.
Yeah.
But probably about 30 years ago, I came across a few weird things and started keeping them. And then when I had the ghost tours downtown in Key West, I'd bring a little briefcase with some of my favorite ones because I used to cleanse people's houses.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd find some weird things. And you think about it, over 30 years, I probably have like 20 cool things. And then all the dolls that people send to Robert, people who say, "Oh, I've got a haunted doll. I can't handle it anymore. Robert, you take it." But when we started doing tours at 40 East Martello, which was just about like 5 or 6 years ago, I put all the objects in this one tunnel, in the Yellow Fever tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And after the tour, we'd let people investigate them, but I wasn't always there to tell all the stories about them. So what I did just last month, I recorded all my stories. So that way, if I'm not there, I've got QR codes and all that stuff. So so people can go to the museum in the daytime and see Robert,
Mm-hmm.
but there's no tour. There's a sign on the wall. They can read about him. They can see him. It's very cool. But then at night, we operate the ghost tours where people can do the regular ghost tour, which is a 30-minute ghost tour through the 30 minutes with Robert the Doll, or they can do VIP, where they get an extra hour after that to hunt ghosts on their own. And it's a crazy old Civil War fort. And we give people all the equipment,
Okay.
spirit boxes, the EMF meters, pretty much everything you can think of. So now people can investigate that haunted hallway and look at these different objects and see what they think. It's a good chance for people to do their own investigations and decide for themselves.
Right. I think that's so important. Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of, and with all my objects that I have, I mean, I'm straight up with the stories, where they came from and stuff like that. Some of them are from cleansings. There's my favorite one I actually bought on eBay, and it was sold as a haunted bedpan.
Oh my gosh.
And it was like $14. I'm like, yeah, why not?
What?
But it's this cool.
That's a first. I've never heard of anything like that.
I know. And it's a little medical pan. But I'd carry that on the ghost tour downtown because you get a lot of people who are psychics who think they're psychics. And so I'd tell them, I'd say, "Hey, look, I've got 5 objects in here. I want you to look at them. Tell me what you think." And I wouldn't tell them the stories.
Mm-hmm.
And with this pan, almost every psychic who touched it said, "Oh, it's from an asylum." And then most of them would say that there was like a mother who was giving birth or a mother and a baby. And the most convincing one, who had picked up on a lot of other things during the tour, she said, "Oh, there was a lady, she was impregnated in the asylum and she lost the baby. And she said, this is the pan that the baby was in when it was being taken away."
Oh, wow.
Now, I was showing this to her, and this was on a street, at the end of the ghost tour, kind of like dark area, and she's holding the pan and just telling me what she's picking up on, and she said, "Ooh," she goes, wait," she goes, "The mother left a ghost print on it,"
Mm.
and I'd never heard of a ghost print. Have you?
I have not.
Yeah.
No.
No.
I asked her. I said, "What's a ghost print?" And she said she left an impression when
Okay.
she died holding it. And she said, "Do you have a flashlight?" So I pull out a flashlight. She starts shining it around on the pan. You can see the marks of fingers on the side of the pan,
Mm.
like indented into it.
Mhm.
Wow.
So to me, that was like, whoa,
Yeah.
I get a little chills with that. But then
Yeah.
I cleansed some people's house. They said that they got home from a vacation. They said our dog won't come in the house, and all of our house plants died overnight. And so I went to do the cleansing and asked them. I said, any changes in relationships, anything new in the house, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
They said, "Oh," they said, "Yeah, we were in New Orleans. We stole this stone from Marie Laveau's grave."
Yeah, that's gonna be a problem.
Yeah. So I was like, yeah, that might be it. So I took that, and I haven't had any issues
Oh
with it.
man.
But so we have that, and that's in there. We'll let people hold it. Some people hold it, and they get intense things. One of my friends, my friend who helped me with the Santeria stuff, after I had one of the possessions with the Robert stuff,
Mhm.
he was there after one of the tours when we're checking out the different objects, and he could hold them and pick up on stuff. This girl, she took that stone. She goes, "What about this one?" And she shoved it into his hand. His eyes rolled back in his head, and he goes, and I'd seen him go into the trance before when we did the Misa. And so I'm putting the cascarilla powder on his back. I'm doing all these things. I'm like, Freddie, trying to bring him out of it. And then when he finally came out of of his encounter with the spirit, he goes, "Whoa." He goes, "She's powerful." He goes, "I like her." And then he looked at the
Wow.
girl. Then he looked at the girl who had put the stone in his hand. He goes, "And don't you ever put anything in my hand without asking me."
Yeah.
So
So you think he encountered where the stone was taken from?
oh no, he
Or-
encountered Marie Laveau.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I-
what I was-
I mean, he had direct contact. He's very
Okay.
powerful.
that would be cool. That would
He's very powerful. And I'll tell you this, I like delving into different religions and different beliefs,
Mhm.
and some of them are extremely powerful. Santeria has proven the most powerful one. And I used to say that I'd studied Santeria and all that stuff. I've experienced Santeria, but I'm nowhere. I have a better understanding of it than most people who haven't experienced it. But
Mhm.
uh, I there's some extreme power there,
Yeah.
and I'm in Pittsburgh right now, which we ended up coming here because I was having brain problems, and they don't have they don't have the facilities in Key West,
Mm.
and I was going to all different doctors and neurologists, and there were like white matter lesions, and they weren't able to figure out what was going on, and they were doing lots of tests, and they were charging me lots of money.
Yeah.
And then in July, when I was back in Key West, the universe directed me to where I bumped into the people who had done the first Misa when I was having problems with the spirits with Robert.
Mhm.
Mm.
And and she said to me, she goes, "Whoa, you've got a bad attachment. We need to get rid of it." And when they did this Misa this time, they called down the spirits. Their faces change and their voices change. And the spirit came through and put his hand on my head. and said, you're having problems with your brain and the doctors can't figure it out. They're not going to figure it out because your brain is fine. It's the spirits.
Hmm.
And they said several other things too. And then they removed them. The next day I woke up, my memory was back. Everything was back. It's one of those things where, I mean, you can't explain it. When I went back to the neurologist and they said, any changes from last time? I said, yeah, I'm fine. And they said, oh, do tell me. And I told them about the Santeria thing, and they're like, okay, well, you should send them up here to me.
Yeah.
But so, there's all that stuff out there, and it's very powerful.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's a very powerful world that exists all around us that we've barely tapped into.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think all of us have that ability to tap into it as well. So,
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
yeah.
What's one thing that you want people to take away from the story of Robert the Doll? When people hear Robert the Doll, like we said in the beginning, they're thinking curses, they're thinking evil, and it's demonic, and all these bad things. You brought up a lot of positive things during this chat here. So, what's one thing that you want people to take away from the story of Robert the Doll?
I think that's up to them.
Mm,
I mean, it's really not up to me. I don't want people to go in thinking Robert's evil.
right. Yeah.
I think if people go in thinking that Robert's magic and stop looking at things as good or bad, and when people go see Robert, people can go see Robert and just be like, "Oh, cool, I saw Robert."
Hmm.
If people want to go a little deeper, if they want to extend their hand, then he'll take them into the forest and he'll take them on a journey.
Hmm.
And it's not an easy journey.
Right.
I mean, I think it'll be custom tailored for whoever it is.
Hmm.
But if they make it through the forest, they're going to come out a better person or a stronger person.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you don't think Robert is intentionally wanting to hurt people?
Nope.
Okay.
No, I think if people are inconsiderate, rude,
Hmm.
there's no tolerance for that.
Right.
And it's kind of like, hey, if you want to be that way, you don't get to taste the good magic.
Mm, I see. And all of the so-called rules that you need to follow when people go
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
see Robert.
they're all made up by humans.
Okay.
Really, the only rule that I suggest is respect.
Yes. Yeah.
And and that's good with humans as well as
Yeah.
with the dolls.
It should go without saying wherever you go, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then one question I am curious about is all these years that you've been working with Robert the Doll and other things at the museum, have you ever captured any evidence in a photograph, EVP,
Oh yeah.
outside of personal experiences?
Yeah. I mean, tons of stuff, and I think probably a lot of it's either on our YouTube channel or Instagram or, but I mean, people are having things happen all the time.
Mhm.
There was a episode of Paranormal caught on camera,
Mhm.
I think earlier this year, and that shows like the coolest thing because when we're doing the tours, I'll put a ball up in Robert's case and it's slightly deflated, and I'll say, Robert, if you don't like anything going on, push the ball so I know
Mhm.
what's going on. That ball's been pushed 13 times.
Wow.
Now, we don't allow videoing during the tour, but on a
Mhm.
couple occasions, people have been videoing. So we've got it captured twice.
I think things like that are so amazing. We actually just did an
Mhm.
investigation, and in one of the rooms, there's these brass candlesticks, and they're very heavy, and battery operated taper candles inside of them. And in some video security footage that they have, you can see this heavy brass candlestick tip and the candle come flying out. It's like we played with these things, we tried to debug these. There's no rope attached to them. Like,
Yeah.
so when stuff like that happens, like a deflated ball is not just gonna roll,
Yeah.
like so.
Yeah. There's on the Paranormal Caught on Camera episode, this is the craziest one that I ever got. There was we use trigger objects. So there was
Mhm.
a little Raggedy Ann or Annabelle that people hold. And this girl was holding it, and a lot of times the person holding it gets touched on the knee. So this girl puts her hand up, she goes, "Something just touched my knee." So I get out my camera and I start filming her. And we're locked in Robert's room. We've got these gates closed. There's nobody else in the fort. And I see this orb, and I saw it with my eyes getting like shooting up towards me. And I'm like, whoa. But then 2 months later, I'm at the dentist and I'm looking through videos. And I look at that one, and behind the gate, you can see something block one of the lights. And then this hand comes out and it pitches the orb. You can see this dark shadow pitch it. And
Oh wow.
it's just insane.
Is that on the YouTube channel you were
That's
saying?
on, I think this is on the YouTube channel. It's on, it's definitely on the Paranormal Caught on Camera. If you look up the Paranormal Caught on Camera with Robert the Doll.
Okay.
Yeah.
Heather, I am out of questions. He's answered everything
Okay, let
that,
me
that I was
pull up my
hoping
list.
he would.
Actually,
Yeah.
I do. I'm pulling up links so I can make sure we get them added at
Perfect.
the end. But then, let me just. Okay, I guess the final question we had. Well, it could lead into more questions, but what is next for you and Robert? Do you have any new projects, documentaries, books, or anything else that we should watch out for?
Yeah. So I wrote the book about Robert the Doll when I found out all that information. But I mean, now it's not outdated, but it's not comprehensive. And what I've realized is that the story of Robert the Doll, at least my story, is better told through me.
Mhm.
So I really want to tell it because it's 3 chapters. And there's the mystery of Robert the Doll, where I was trying to find out, like what's going on. Then there's the possession of Robert the Doll, where not just me, but several other people have been possessed by these spirits and taken over. I mean, Ozzy Osbourne, Sam and Colby. You have a lot of people who have come under Robert's influence. And then the last section would be the magic of Robert the Doll, and that's really uncovering everything about the German origins. So, so I'm gonna work on that this year. I mean, Robert's not the only thing that I do.
Right.
I just yesterday, yeah. So on 11/11 at 11/11, I finished my book, which is called "How Key West Killed JFK,"
Oh.
which sounds a little bizarre, but I was researching a missing fire chief in Key West. His name was Bum Fardo, and he disappeared in 1976. He was like Jimmy Hoffa of Key West. And me and a friend set out to find out what happened to him. And I did FOIA requests and got FBI files. And I found all these things that led to the JFK assassination. I was like, what? And there was a Key West baker who is a second shooter suspect.
Mm.
And so I started writing this story. I mean, it ties in the mafia. It's just a fascinating Key West history because I like all aspects of Key West history. But then he had disappeared in 1963. I found out what happened to him, and I found his daughter, and I've been able to fill in everything that's happened since he crossed the border. And I found information that ties him to the assassination.
Oh wow.
So, and that's another one of those situations where it's like, I feel like the universe is sending the stuff in. So, but Robert has good stuff coming up too.
Mhm. And that actually reminds me of a question that I thought of, but I forgot to write it down. Some of my extensive research that I've done in Florida is on Fort Jefferson. Have you
Yeah.
done any research over there? Because for some
Yeah.
reason, I seem to be attracted to the whole Civil War aspect of that fort.
Yeah.
It just amazes me.
Yeah. It's incredible energy out there. That's how I met Jack Osborne. He was doing Haunted Highway.
Mhm.
And instead of going out to Fort Jefferson when they went there, we filmed our section at Fort East Martello. And
Okay.
that's when I introduced him to Robert the Doll. And then he brought his dad back there.
Mhm.
But Fort Jefferson, you had so much death. You had so much, I mean, the yellow fever, horrible, horrible conditions.
Yeah.
And yet you can't help but have those things there. And then even the graves that were there have been taken over by the sea.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And the salt water,
Mhm.
salt traps things. Water energizes things.
Yeah.
And there was never anything good going on out there.
Mhm.
There's a really great diary that's worth reading. From there was a woman who was out there. Her and her husband were out there before the Civil War started, and then the Civil War
Mhm.
started, and he was a surgeon, and he was out there, like collecting marine samples, and
Mhm.
so he ended up staying, and they were there through the entire war. And she wrote a diary about it, and she was like a big foodie. So she's talking about, she was just amazed by what was going on there. But she has the best account of what life was like out there.
Mhm.
So that's something worth checking out.
That's cool. Yeah, it's just the architecture, the stories, it's just everything. And the one thing I think 3 of my 7 books talk about Dr. Mudd.
Yeah.
And how people still believe that he's hanging out there, and how big of a turnaround he had when he jumped to action during yellow fever.
Yeah. Yeah. He was a huge part of that. But you hear the stories. They used to put mud in their coffee to give it flavor. There were bugs in it. There were no vegetables. And then they had a moat there. And there was a big shark that they put in the moat. And I think they called him like the bosun general or something.
Mm-hmm.
But if anybody tried to escape, they'd have to go in the moat, and the guards would just shoot whoever was trying to escape and shoot him in the leg or something. So they started bleeding, and then the shark would get them.
Jeez.
Yep.
And and then they were all drinking salt water because the cisterns were cracking, and they had torture chambers where the water would flood, and you'd be in there where you just
Wow.
had that much room to breathe. It was a horrendous place. And you look at it and you think about the manpower that it took to build it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they're surrounded by what most people would consider beauty, but to
Mhm.
them it was the worst
Yeah.
thing ever.
Yeah.
And so it's all perception.
Mhm.
Yep. So anything else, Tiffany, that came to mind
No.
last minute? No,
No,
because we got all my
yeah.
questions done. I was surprised. Hey, anything else that you want to add before we let you go?
No, this has been great.
No?
I appreciate you both.
And if people want information on the Key West ghost tours, where should they go?
I always send people to hauntedkeywest.com.
Okay.
Okay.
Because I have a directory for everything haunted in Key West. For my
Okay.
actual ghost tours, it's ghostkeywest.com.
Okay.
But Haunted Key West will tell them like the haunted bars, restaurants. It'll have
Perfect.
links to my tour. It'll have links to other people's tours. So
Okay.
so there's all that stuff. And then for me, like on Instagram and stuff, David L. Sloan.
Mhm.
On Facebook, Florida Keys. So
Great. We have all of those links listed here.
Yeah. There we go. Last one's coming up. There we go.
There we go.
Okay. Well, thank you again for joining us. It has been an absolute pleasure. And if you're in Key West in October, I definitely want to see you.
yeah, let me know when you're coming down because I'll get
Okay.
you set up with tours and all and
Okay.
all that good stuff. And
Awesome.
and then if I'm in Texas, signing books for the JFK assassination stuff,
Yep.
I will let you know.
Definitely let me know, because I do have some things here in Florida or in Texas that I think you might be interested in.
Great.
So yeah, because I'm
Great.
keeping my fingers crossed with that Dr. Pepper Museum in Waco.
Yes.
That we can start
Oh,
more.
You need to
Yeah,
keep me
yeah,
posted on that.
Yeah. So
Sweet.
definitely we'll stay in touch. So thank you
And
everybody
Tiffany,
for joining
I'll
us.
find you if I end up up where you are.
Yeah, in Atlanta. Yeah.
Yep.
There's lots of stuff here.
Yep. Okay. Well, we will make sure we share everything out. And definitely we'll reach out to you again next year if you're interested in joining us.
Yeah.
I know I have a show planned for next year for haunted dolls
Great. Yeah.
that I think you'd
anytime,
be a
just let me
great
know.
one to be on that one. So we'll
Yeah.
definitely reach out. So Tiffany, anything else before we go?
No, that's it.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for watching today. Just a quick recap again. You can always find us at Ghost Education 101 on Facebook. Watch the replays of all of our shows since 2020 on Ghost Education 101 on Facebook. And again, like I said, that website is up, but it only has one page right now. Make sure you let us know that you're there by just sending us a quick message. And next week we have a show, which if you're available, David, I can send you the link too. We have 4 panel authors coming on. We have Sam Beltrusis, Alex Matsuo, Sin Schrader Hill, and Mark Muncy joining us next week to talk about paranormal writing.
Nice. I love Mark. He's great.
Yep. I know. I've met him a couple of years ago at a convention. He's great. I love him.
Yeah. I don't know the others. I'll look forward to hearing about them.
Perfect. But thank you again, everybody. And we will see you next week. Have a great night.
Thanks,
Good
guys.
night.
Bye.
Happy hauntings.